Have you ever been left in silence, wondering what her quietness might actually be saying? Silence can sometimes feel louder than any words, especially when it's from someone you care about deeply. It's as if there's an invisible wall, and the more you try to reach her, the more distant she seems. But what if her silence is trying to tell you something critical, something that could change everything? By the end of this video, you'll uncover 6 ways her silence speaks volumes about where she stands emotionally. These aren't the usual signs. They're subtle, almost hidden, and easy to miss if you're not paying attention. But if you can recognize them, you'll have the insight needed to understand her true feelings before it's too late. Create an atmosphere of fear and urgency. If you don't see these signs, her silence might eventually turn into a permanent absence. Every day that passes without understanding what her quietness is trying to tell you could be one step closer to losing her for good. Don't wait until it's too late. Recognize the signs now before her silence turns into a lasting goodbye. Silence as a barrier to emotional connection. Think back to those early days when the conversations seemed endless. You'd talk about dreams, fears, even the small everyday details that made you feel connected. But now something's changed. When you try to engage her, there's a wall, a silence that's both heavy and confusing. She listens, nods, but rarely offers anything in return. It feels as if her emotions are locked away, with a barrier you can't see but can definitely feel. This kind of silence isn't just about a quiet moment, it's a barrier she's built around her feelings, keeping you at a distance. Silence as a barrier means she's creating emotional distance, intentionally or not. When someone stops opening up, it's often because they're uncertain about their feelings or hesitant about the future of the relationship. Her silence becomes a form of self-protection, a way of shielding her emotions from potential hurt, confusion, or doubt. Stoic philosophy often speaks about protecting the inner self and maintaining peace by guarding one's emotions. A Stoic would say that keeping a calm inner state is essential, but in relationships, this guardedness can be a signal of shifting priorities or unspoken doubts. If she's drawing inward, it may mean she's prioritizing her inner peace over connection, a sign that her commitment to the relationship may be wavering. Every unspoken word adds another layer to the wall between you. With each silent moment, she's signaling her uncertainty and creating a growing gap. If this wall of silence keeps building, it could reach a point where her heart is no longer within your reach. Are you ready to break through this silence before it becomes unbreakable? Silence as a form of disengagement. You start noticing a subtle shift. She's no longer eager to join conversations, especially about things that once sparked her interest. You can almost feel the weight of her silence in the air. Her responses are shorter than usual, or sometimes they're delayed. There's no longer that spark in her eyes when you share something important to you. More often than not, she seems distracted, as if her mind is drifting far from the conversation, somewhere else, somewhere not with you. In a relationship, emotional investment naturally shows through engagement. When someone is truly present, they engage wholeheartedly. Silence, in this case, isn't just a pause in conversation. It signals a withdrawal of attention and care. This kind of silence isn't passive, it's a statement. I'm here, but I'm not really with you. It's as if her attention is no longer on you or the relationship. This type of silence points to a deeper emotional shift. It's a sign that her interest in the relationship is fading, that her emotional energy is being redirected elsewhere. When someone disengages in this way, it's often a precursor to a larger disconnect, where their emotional presence has already started to slip away. Philosophical insight. Stoicism teaches that we have control over where we focus our energy. Marcus Aurelius, in particular, spoke about the power of directing our attention to what truly matters. In relationships, if someone begins withdrawing their energy, it often means that their priorities or values have shifted. This is more than a temporary lapse in engagement. It's a signal that they are no longer choosing to invest in the connection the way they once did. When she stops being present in your world, it's no longer just silence. It's a quiet goodbye. It's a gentle, unnoticed release of the bond you once shared. And if you don't recognize this withdrawal soon, you may find yourself standing in the silence of a relationship that's already begun to fade away. Silence as a means of avoiding conflict. In the past, disagreements between you were never easy, but they always led to discussion, even heated arguments. You'd hash things out, sometimes with tension, but it was a part of your dynamic. Now, when issues arise, she chooses silence instead of confrontation. When a problem surfaces, she lets it slide or simply doesn't react. The worst part? You're left wondering if she's even affected by the conflict at all. Her silence lingers, and the problem festers, unaddressed, unresolved, and seemingly ignored. Silence in this context is not peace, it's avoidance. It's a way of sidestepping the discomfort of confrontation, but more importantly, it often reflects resignation. When someone avoids conflict, it can signal that they no longer feel it's worth the emotional energy to resolve the issue. Perhaps she's concluded that talking won't change anything, or maybe she's emotionally disconnected from the relationship enough that fighting for it no longer feels necessary. This silence can be a powerful indicator that she's already begun to let go. It's no longer about saving the relationship, it's about maintaining inner peace, even at the expense of the bond between you. Stoicism teaches us to focus our energy only on what is within our control. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to avoid wasting energy on things that did not truly matter. If she's no longer engaging in conflict resolution, it could be her way of signaling that her emotional investment in the relationship has shifted. She may be recognizing that the effort required to fix things isn't worth it anymore. In essence, this silence might be her subtle form of acceptance, an acknowledgement that some things, including the relationship, are beyond repair. When silence replaces arguments, it's no longer a moment of peace, it's a quiet surrender. It's a signal that she's quietly accepting a future without you, choosing peace over the passion that once fueled your relationship. And as the silence grows, so does the distance, leaving you to wonder if you've already lost her, without a single word being spoken. Silence as a means of self-reflection and distance. Lately, you've noticed a shift. She spends more time alone, lost in thought, or engrossed in her own activities. She seems distant, and even though she's physically present, her silence feels like she's a million miles away. It's not just the quiet, it's the way her presence feels absent, as if her mind is somewhere far beyond your shared space. Conversations are fewer, and even when she's around, it feels like she's emotionally checked out. This type of silence isn't simply the absence of words, it's a deliberate creation of emotional space. It's a way of drawing boundaries, a silent plea for distance. When someone begins to pull away like this, it often signals a deep internal shift. She's likely reevaluating her place in the relationship, taking the time to reflect on what she truly wants. It's not about you, it's about her own personal journey, where she's trying to figure out where she stands and whether her current relationship aligns with her evolving needs and desires. While her silence may appear as detachment, it may actually be an attempt to gain clarity in the midst of her own emotional confusion. In Stoic philosophy, self-reflection and solitude are key components to understanding oneself. The Stoics believed in taking time to step back from external distractions in order to gain inner peace and wisdom. This silence could be her attempt to seek that clarity, a necessary process in understanding her own desires. But it also reflects something deeper. She's finding comfort or fulfillment outside of the relationship. Just as the Stoics emphasized the importance of self-reliance, her silence may be a sign that she's starting to rely more on herself than on the bond the two of you share. When she drifts into silence for self-reflection, it's no longer just about finding peace. It's a sign that she's questioning her own happiness. And as she seeks answers, those answers may no longer include you. The silence isn't just her retreat. It's the beginning of her emotional departure. Silence as an expression of unmet needs. Once, she used to be open about her needs and desires. Whether it was something as simple as a hug after a long day or a deeper conversation about your future together, she didn't shy away from expressing what she wanted. But now, there's a noticeable shift. She stopped asking for the things she once craved, whether big or small, and you begin to notice the silence that fills the space instead. The affectionate gestures, the heartfelt requests, all replaced by a quiet resignation. Silence about unmet needs is her way of signaling that something is lacking in the relationship. When she no longer voices her desires, it's not because she's suddenly content, it's because she no longer expects those needs to be met. This silence often stems from a place of quiet surrender. She may have tried to express herself in the past, only to be met with indifference or neglect. Over time, this silence becomes a form of self-protection, a way of retreating emotionally rather than continuing to put herself out there for disappointment. It's a quiet admission that she's stopped hoping for change, and as a result, the emotional bond weakens. Reflecting on Stoic philosophy, one of the core teachings is the acceptance of what cannot be changed. The Stoics believed in focusing on what is within our control and letting go of the rest. When she stops expressing her needs, it could signal her acceptance that those needs may never be fulfilled. By choosing silence over confrontation, she is emotionally letting go, resigning herself to the fact that the relationship is no longer capable of providing her with what she desires. This marks a shift from hope to acceptance, and ultimately, a sign of emotional distance. Her silence isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's her way of saying that she no longer believes in the potential of the relationship to meet her needs. In this quiet surrender, she's already begun to let go. Silence as the prelude to closure. There are moments when you look over at her and she's staring off into the distance, lost in thought. Her silence isn't filled with the usual contemplation. It feels almost solemn, as though she's carrying the weight of something unspoken. It's as if she's quietly preparing herself for something final, something that has already been decided in her mind. This silence hangs in the air, heavy with meaning, and you can't help but wonder, is she saying goodbye, even though she hasn't said the words yet? This type of silence is the final stage of emotional detachment, a prelude to closure. She's no longer trying to change things or fight for the relationship. Instead, she's finding her own closure in silence. This isn't a dramatic or loud exit. It's a soft, internal process where she has come to terms with the idea of moving on. In this space, she doesn't need to voice her thoughts because she's already made peace with the fact that the relationship is ending. This quiet detachment is often a sign that she's emotionally disengaging before formally ending things. She's mentally and emotionally preparing herself for a future without you. Philosophical insight. Stoic philosophy teaches us the inevitability of endings. The Stoics believed that everything has its time, whether it's a relationship, a season, or an opportunity, and once its time is over, it's best to accept it without resistance. Her silence could be her way of processing this reality, accepting that the relationship has come to its natural close. In this quiet reflection, she may be preparing herself to move forward, allowing herself the emotional space to let go before taking the final step. When her silence shifts to this deep, reflective state, it's as if she's already saying her goodbyes without uttering a single word. She's preparing for the end, and you might not even realize it until it's too late. Today, we've explored the 6 powerful ways her silence speaks volumes. As a barrier to emotional connection, as a sign of disengagement, as avoidance of conflict, as a means of self-reflection, as an expression of unmet needs, and as a prelude to closure. These silences can often feel subtle, easy to overlook or dismiss, but they carry profound truths about where she stands emotionally. Each moment of silence holds a clue, a signal of her inner world and what's happening beneath the surface. If you're attuned to these silences, you can uncover a lot about the emotional dynamics of your relationship. Philosophical insight. In Stoic philosophy, there's an emphasis on facing the truth, no matter how difficult. Silence, especially in relationships, can be one of the hardest things to confront, as it often carries more weight than words. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot control others' actions or feelings, we can control how we respond. Silence may be uncomfortable, but understanding its message allows us to act thoughtfully. Whether we need to address underlying issues or prepare for the inevitable, we can face these truths with courage and clarity, choosing our next steps wisely. Now, I encourage you to reflect on your own relationships. Are you noticing any of these unspoken silences? What do they tell you about the emotional state of the person you care about? Pay attention to these signs. They could be the key to understanding what's really going on. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, subscribe for more discussions like this and engage with more content to help navigate the complexities of relationships. Remember, silence can say what words cannot, and sometimes the hardest things to hear are those that are never spoken aloud. The truth is often hiding in the spaces where words fail us.